please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
You seem to suggest that we need to start looking at spending from a different lens, from the traditional lens that we've got used to looking at these things from. What do you mean? And give me a sense of what you're seeing change in the environment.
I think the world is going from a more, if I would say, processing kind of an environment where there's annual cycle and then there is budgetary cycles which are very tightly linked to that. We are going into a much more agile world, and with projects which are much shorter duration on a constant basis, with ebbs and flows of funding based on where business priorities go. And IT is becoming more and more linked to business. So the kind of spending that you see is a lot more dynamic compared to more static kind of annual budgeting based. So that was what I was alluding to. And this whole shift to agile is something that we are significantly embracing. And we stitch this together. And we are seeing increasing traction in our customer base, where there's a lot of interest in looking at these truly transformative deals. But I wouldn't know whether to characterize that as an industry-wide phenomenon, but we definitely are seeing traction in our pipeline.
Is this pipeline looking strong? Do you believe that you will be able to continue to, at least in the foreseeable future, clock up some of these kinds of deals?
I know we have set ourselves a very high threshold, so I don't want to comment against that. But let me put it this way: the interest levels are quite high, right? And these are pipelines that are very difficult to predict. So there is traction, there is interest, but how the closure rate comes through, that only time will tell.
You know, there's been a lot of talk, and I asked Dharmendra this, and he said, well, that's something that TCS is going to have to look at, and this is the possible consolidation within the IT companies. You know, what's your take on that? We wish you the very best
Thanks,
of luck. Well, we're continuing our coverage here from the World Economic Forum at Davos. Joining us now is Neeraj Kavar from Apollo Tyres. Neeraj, appreciate you joining us on CNBC TV18. Let me first ask you about what you made of the Prime Minister's speech and his message to investors here in Davos. What, to your mind, was this most significant takeaway?
Well, I thought it was a very, very positive speech, very holistic speech. Spoke well about India, has given very clear signals for the industry to come and invest in India. Has also said that the ease of doing business, he will lay the carpet for FDIs to come into India. So all in all, I think has been very, very positive. The mood here is very positive for India, and people are really hoping to see that he actually implements what he's saying. And I think from my perspective, we've seen in India that there are positive signs. We ourselves are now just setting up a new green field in Andhra.
That's what, about 1,800 crores?
1,800 crores we're going to be spending in Andhra. So CapEx is going into India. We're spending in Chennai. So all in all, I think it was very, very positive.
So altogether, in this financial year, what is the investment plan?
Well, as you know, Chennai is going through a expansion program. Andhra will start this year, so less of investments in Andhra. It's a greenfield, will happen more towards the end of next year. We'll be looking at around 1,000 to 1,500 crores in this fiscal year.
Okay.
But I'm happy to say our Q3 results have been very positive, and that's really the signs of the reforms that have come in. GST, we've been least hurt. We're seeing supply chain increasing. Ease of doing business in India has also relatively become easier. Q3, like I was mentioning, we've seen double-digit growths in India. Europe, on the other hand, has also been very good for Apollo. So all in all, I think it's a good sign going forward. So the journey has begun. Next year is really going to be consolidation, getting Hungary up to scale, getting Hungary production out, and really getting profits out as much as we can.
You spoke about the Hungarian consolidation, but what about M&A? Is that likely for FY18 on the calendar? Because there was a lot of rumors once again around a South Korean company and so on and so forth. What's the thinking on that front?
No, I don't think, Shereen. Currently, our hands are full. We have to see how we can consolidate Hungary. We have to see how we can take up the expansion coming out of Chennai. So right now, both human resources and capital resources are totally booked up. And we're just trying to see how we can get the benefit of all these products coming out, selling them in the market. Profitable growth is what we are looking at in the new FY19.
So since you were talking about demand picking up, and I was just taking a look at the numbers, you know, the past 3 years, it's been what, about a 1% CAGR between FY14 and FY17. So do you see that changing? And where is the demand really kicking in from? Largely replacement, or?
I think both. you will see Q3 volumes at a high, both in OEMs in India and in replacement. We're seeing double-digit growth. And Apollo has really launched a lot of marketing activities, a lot of new products into the market. The Chinese anti-dumping, which the government finally came with, has also helped the industry.
So how much is that down by? About 40%?
Imports had reached 30% of the market, now are down to 15%.
Okay.
So, and demonetization also helped Chinese walk away. So I think with Apollo's new product strategy, new R&D products that are coming out, I think we are in a state where we will see healthy growths coming on the top line. But I just want to warn that raw material still remains a challenge.
Is that going to have an impact on margins?
Yes, right. Margins are under pressure. They'll continue to be under pressure. That's where we want to see some reforms coming in, custom duties coming into for our raw materials that are being imported into India. And that's what we are taking up with the government to see if we can do some reforms over there so that we become competitive enough to fight with the MNCs in our turf.
So, I mean, if that were not to happen, what is the kind of margin picture, margin trajectory that we should expect?
Well, like I said, margins are under pressure. As you know, oil has gone up. It has touched $70 a barrel. So margins will remain under pressure. I can't give you any forward-looking numbers, but yeah, they do remain under pressure. But at the same time, volume increase, market share increase should release some margins also into the system.
You know, the global story at this point in time, we're seeing a pretty broad-based global recovery. So what's your own take on that and the benefits that it is likely to accrue to you?
Well, I think, you know, we've seen this earlier in the stage, and that's why we put capex into Hungary. We put over 500 million euros into Hungary. We are seeing a good demand for Apollo and Fredestein brands in Europe. We've put seeds into Thailand, into Dubai, to look at the Southeast Asia, Middle East markets. We're currently touching close to $80–85 million of revenue there. So, yes, global markets are recovering. It's good for us because already the hard work has been done, the foundation has been laid, brand pull is happening, and we just have to sit back and try and see that we can really push our products into the system.
So what's the one thing that you're hoping will be realized for you in 2018 from a business strategy perspective?
I think the main challenge remains Hungary because it's a new land, new culture, new geography. We need to see how quickly we can ramp up the production there and sell that. And that's my main target for FY19.
So are you looking at India as a foreign investor or as a domestic investor now that you've moved out of India and you're actually based in London?
I'm very much Indian and I keep going back once a month. And in fact, we have 50 expats in Hungary from India. And we are very proud to put our India flag in Hungary and in Netherlands. And it gives us great satisfaction.
Well, Neeraj, it's always a pleasure. We wish you the very best of luck. Thanks for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Neeraj covered their Apollo Tyres, taking us through the outlook for 2018 here from Davos. For now, it's back to you. Joining us here is the SBI Chief, Rajesh Kumar. So thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Foreign investors continue to be optimistic about the India story. The question now is about domestic investors and whether we are starting to see investment change and the investment climate change when it comes to domestic investors. What's your own sense in terms of project sanctions, etc.?
Project pipeline is still, I would say, is not as strong as we would like it to be. But otherwise, we know that domestic large corporate houses, they had some problem on the leveraging. Many corporate houses, they had issue on the asset quality front. So we are gradually coming out of that. And once that happens, then we can see better investment climate in the country as far as the domestic...
You're saying gradually coming out of the deleveraging problem. NCLT, the first list and the second list, how confident do you feel about things moving on both of those?
So right now they're on the track. Of course, in most of the cases, there was a time extension of 90 days, which is permitted as per the process. But quite a few cases, the resolution plans have come in and they are being evaluated. So the first list, which was referred sometimes in July and August, I am very hopeful that by end of March or mid-April, at least for those 12 large cases, the decision would have been taken.
By April or March for the first list?
First list.
Okay.
And then it is a continuous process.
Joining us here is the SBI Chief, Rajesh Kumar. So thanks very much for joining us here on CNBC TV18. Foreign investors continue to be optimistic about the India story. The question now is about domestic investors and whether we are starting to see investment change and the investment climate change when it comes to domestic investors. What's your own sense in terms of project sanctions, etc.?
Project pipeline is still, I would say, is not as strong as we would like it to be. But otherwise, we know that domestic large corporate houses, they had some problem on the leveraging. Many corporate houses, they had issue on the asset quality front. So we are gradually coming out of that. And once that happens, then we can see better investment climate in the country as far as the domestic...
You're saying gradually coming out of the deleveraging problem. NCLT, the first list and the second list, how confident do you feel about things moving on both of those?
So right now they're on the track. Of course, in most of the cases, there was a time extension of 90 days, which is permitted as per the process. But quite a few cases, the resolution plans have come in and they are being evaluated. So the first list, which was deferred sometimes in July and August, I am very hopeful that by end of March or mid-April, at least for those 12 large cases, the decision would have been taken.
By April or March for the first list?
First list.
Okay.
And then it is a continuous process. And now it has become a continuous process for the banks and the financial creditors also. That wherever they feel that the resolution or any settlement is not possible or not seeing the light of the day, then the best course of option for the financial creditors and as well operational creditor remains that they go to the NCLT and initiate the process on the insolvency and bankruptcy court. So that way, like, it has become some sort of a time-bound process and brought a lot of time discipline.
So what about the second list? If you're saying first should get resolved or at least meet with some kind of conclusion by March or April, then what about the second list?
So second list was all November and December.
Yeah.
So that would be somewhere in June or July.
Okay.
Before we can see the resolution plans coming in. But in any case, that should now become a part of the normal process.
Okay. What's your own sense on loan growth, sir? Because it's, it's flattered to disappoint so far. What's your own take on that?
So if you look at from the sector specific, then consumer loans are growing at a very good pace and there has not been any slowdown. The corporate credit is still, the growth continues to be muted. And which it will remain for some time because as we press that the corporates have to deleverage, that is one. Second is the sectors where there is overcapacity, then the people would not like to invest. But the investment will definitely be the sector-specific investment. One big turnaround story which I am seeing is around the steel sector, where everybody is bullish. And 1.5 years ago, there was a lot of gloom and doom around the steel sector.
Okay, so steel you're seeing a recovery.
Yeah. And that is evidenced by the fact also that in all the steel sector references to NCLT, there is a lot of interest amongst the investors, both domestic and overseas. So this is a sign of the things to come. And the steel sector is one sector which is one of the core sectors and which indicates shape of the things to come. If a steel sector people are bullish, it means that they are bullish about the overall economic recovery.
Right. You know, the Prime Minister is going to be talking about the reform agenda, and one of the achievements that the government would like to talk about here is the PSB bank recap plan. Any more clarity now on when and how much we're going to start to see come in to specific banks?
So 80,000 crore is what this year's plan is.
That's right.
And this is in addition to what some of the banks have raised capital through QIP and this thing. So this 80,000 crore is the recapitalization bond. And 10,000 crore was from the budgetary support, which has already been announced and given to the banks. So this allocation, I am expecting that this should happen much before the budget.
Okay.
That is
before the budget.
Before the budget.
Okay.
So next 1 week, the allocation details should be coming along with.
How much are you expecting?
State Bank of India, I have always said that the way to view State Bank is that you could be either at the bottom of the ladder or the top of the ladder. There is no in between for us. So
what's the likelihood of you being on top of the ladder?
If not this year, then definitely next year.
Okay.
Because at this juncture, there may be more pressing demands for those banks which are falling short of the international capital adequacy requirement. So they also have to be given priority. But going forward, definitely what I feel is that the remaining capital, the more allocation will be coming for the growth, and this time probably the allocation would be more to meet the capital adequacy requirement. This is my sense, but ultimately it is a matter of a few days and we would know.
Do you think consolidation is likely to be a theme in 2018 in the public sector banking space, or do you think that perhaps it will be a little bit longer?
It will be a little bit longer. In 2018, the capitalization, the cleanup, the resolution, all this should happen. The banks, they will need to put their business strategy also in place. That going forward, what changes they need to bring in their business strategy. And once that has been done and the banks become stronger and come out of the current position, which is not very strong. So once they come out of that, then one can think of consolidation.
What's the outlook as far as rates are concerned now? Do you expect a pause now, given where inflation is for some time, or what is the outlook?
My feeling is that interest rates, of course, the change in yield on the government bonds of which was about 100 basis points. So the banking system probably was not expecting that. But going forward and given the outlook for the inflation and the growth in the economy, I don't foresee that there will be any major change as far as the repo rate is concerned.
Okay, what are you factoring in terms of growth, sir?
In terms of growth for the bank, credit growth?
As well as for the economy?
Economy, our internal research indicates about 7.1%. That is the State Bank Economic Research Department's estimate. And credit growth in 2018, we are pegging for State Bank of India at around 9 to 10%.
Okay. And NPAs, do you believe that the worst is behind us now, and what can we expect now?
So I would say that worst is behind the banking system, because the fresh accretion to NPAs that has tapered down. And as the resolution starts happening, then the gross NPA as well as the net NPA number should start coming down.
Mr. Kumar, always a pleasure, sir. Thanks very much for joining us. On CNBC TV18 is Sumant Sinha of Renew Power. Sumant, appreciate you joining us here on CNBC TV18. Let me talk to you about your business in specific. You've just done a deal with CPPIB. $144 million is what they've invested. They've bought out the ADB stake in the company. What next now for you? How soon before we see you headed towards an IPO?
Well, Shereen, I really can't talk about that, as you well know. But I think clearly, we look at various fundraising options all the time. And I think in that context, we'll be looking at certainly the public markets. We're doing a lot of things on the debt side, and that is something that is not well appreciated, because 3/4 of our capital structure is what we do on the debt side. And we've done a lot of innovative transactions there. Most recently, we've done this cross-collateralized bond issue, which got a rating of single A+, allows us to bring down the cost of capital, which is very important in the kind of competitive environment that we're in. If you can bring down the cost of 3/4 of your total capital, allows you to offer better tariffs, allows you to keep the cost of energy low.
So you're not going to tell me whether you're looking at an IPO anytime soon?
I think it's something that we've talked about a lot, Shereen, in the past. I think, there are various things that we have to look at.
Deals? Acquisitions?
Of course, those are happening all the time, right? It's a market in which a lot of people are looking at selling their assets. I think a lot of the smaller players who are sub 1,000 megawatts recognize that this is not a market where they can now operate. It's a market which is moving towards scale, and therefore there are going to be inevitably the consolidation acquisition opportunities that will happen, which we're already looking at, and we've done a couple of transactions. Hopefully we shall do a few more as we go forward. But I think if you look at the sector as a whole, the scale is changing, right? We're now going to be having, in the next wind auction that we have, the maximum that you can bid for is 500 megawatts, which is a $500 million investment size. So the kind of people who can now compete in this market are not going to be the players who are the small guys who were thinking that this is a market in which they could go inside of a few megawatts of capacity and then sell out, because A, it's getting very competitive, and B, it is becoming a big boys game. So I think, you do need to have large investors of the type of CPPIB, ADIA, JERA, of the type that we have right now to support, for example, us in this growth journey that we're on. And look, I think we're just at the beginning of the energy transition.
Yeah,
right
but
now.
how confident do you feel about being able to, the government being able to achieve the targets, fairly ambitious targets that it set out for itself on the renewable side?
I think that they are going to be able to achieve it. I think if you just look at what the new minister is doing, Mr. Singh, he's already talked about big announcements. There's a 2,000 megawatt capacity of wind auction coming up. We just had 2,000 megawatts each in wind in the recent past. We have a lot of new solar auctions coming up as well. Yes, in solar there are some uncertainties, particularly with respect to taxes and policies and so on. And that goes
safeguard
to the
duties?
So I think, of course, there's that whole discussion going on right now. I'm optimistic that safeguard duties will not be levied. If you see the decision that Trump took yesterday in terms of safeguard duties in the US, they've actually been fairly pragmatic about it. And they've also said that because we don't have a domestic manufacturing capacity, we will allow cells to be imported without the same kind of tariff structure.
So you're hoping India follows?
So I think we should be prudent as well. We don't have a domestic manufacturing industry in solar right now. So if you protect that small, tiny industry, it'll bring up the cost of the entire 10,000-15,000 megawatts that you want to set up every year. And that is really counterproductive.
Okay.
So really what we need to do is we need to give direct incentives to the manufacturing sector and essentially allow the prices to stay low and not levy a safeguard duty.
Let me end then by asking you, what's the big thing that we should expect from you in 2018?
Well, I think you can take a pretty good guess at it. I think there will be some pretty seminal events. I think we've had some shareholders who've been there for a while. I think some of them might be looking to exit in whichever way is the best possible manner from their standpoint. So there will be some changes. We have, of course, new high quality investors coming in as well. And so I think that's normal for a company where your investors, some come in, some go out. And I think that is the kind of change that we'll see happening. But I think, the central message here, Shereen, has to be that, this is a great sector. The government is very supportive. We are at the beginning of an energy transition. And as Renew Power, we're very excited to be playing in that journey right now.
Well, Sumant, wish you the very best of luck. And thanks very much for joining us here in Davos.
Thank you. Thank you.
We're continuing our coverage here at the World Economic Forum in Davos, and joining me now is Tony Fernandez of AirAsia. Tony, always good to have you on the program.
Good to be here.
Thanks very much for joining us. You had dinner with the Prime Minister yesterday. Take me through what your key messaging was from that.
Well, I mean, I was super impressed. I think there are many leaders who could take a page out of him, actually. He talked about making it easier to do business, which we've seen at AirAsia. He talked about being open to foreign investment and opening up India. India, to many, have seemed closed. And just 4 or 5 key pillars for him in terms of transforming India. What was interesting, I mean, obviously all of corporate India was there, which that in itself was impressive when you think of the companies India has created, from TCS to the Ambanis to Kotak Bank, etc. It was very impressive. But everyone was, which they obviously would, but there was obviously lots of elements of truth in how they had praised the transformation of India through the Modi government. So gave me a real uplift that I've got into India at the right time. And
but it's been a while since you got into India.
It
2013.
Has. Yeah, I mean, you always say that to me, that but I've always said to you that it's not a sprint.
Yeah.
It's a marathon.
Yeah.
India is a huge opportunity, and it's not been easy for us. It's been well documented, but I think we kind of see sunlight, and we're very excited about
So
being
what's
in
the
India.
plan for India now? I mean, you've met with your joint venture partner, Tata's, with Chandra. What's the plan for AirAsia India?
Well, I mean, I think we both share the same optimism. We both see the potential. Interesting enough, we see slightly different. Many airlines see India as taking Indian passengers out. We see bringing a lot of Indian tourists, tourists into
India,
the amazing India, right? We see a huge potential not just in the metros, but in the secondary and tertiary cities. So, we have a government that is very open, a government that wants to ease business, a nice competitive environment. Yes, at dinner, on the left side was Naresh, on the right side was Spice, but we all were nice to each other, and they've all done very well. So I think it's a good time to be in India, and I left that dinner feeling very upbeat about the decisions we made about going into India.
What about going international now? The rules have changed. What's the plan in terms of fleet acquisition? How soon can we expect you to take your international plans?
We're on a rush now. We now feel, for many years I said, it's not about getting there, it's about doing it right. We're now putting the foot on the accelerator.
Which means how many aircraft?
Well, we're hoping to get to 20 by August or so.
Of 2018?
18, yeah.
Okay, you're what, 8 currently, right?
No. We're about 14, 15 now. So we're beginning to push the pedal. We believe we know how to handle it. We know there's clarity in regulation now, which for many times I said I didn't know what the regulation was. And so, we're looking forward to that 20 planes. But domestic, through all the tough time my friends have given me in the airline industry, we've got better in domestic, and domestic is actually...
What is the current market share?
We are still very small. We're about 5% of the market share. But interesting enough, in the AirAsia group this year, if we deliver what we say we're going to do, India will be number 3 in our group. And it'll be ahead of Indonesia and Philippines. Which is an impressive number. And we could be profitable now, but we're pushing expansion, so we're slightly loss-making.
At the World Economic Forum is Rajesh Singh of SpiceJet. Thanks very much for joining us, sir. The Prime Minister has now spoken. What did you make of what the message was that he sent out?
I think he gave a great speech. I think he spoke about India's role in the world today, how India's past had solutions for the world's future. And basically, I think all in all, a great pitch for Indian leadership in today's world.
Okay, a pitch for Indian leadership in today's world. Let me ask you about your prospects now. And civil aviation is a sector where just recently the government has allowed foreign direct investment into Air India, ostensibly to pave the way for its disinvestment. When we last spoke, you said that you had no interest in Air India. Does that still stand?
Absolutely, of course.
No change?
No change. I think it's a very, very large asset with very large problems. And I think SpiceJet is too small to take up such a large challenge. I think what the government is doing is absolutely right, though. It's time that we stop wasting taxpayer money on Air India. And it's a great brand and can be a great force multiplier, that company, if it's managed well. And so we hope that somebody who buys it will make sure that they strengthen the company and improve the brand.
Let me ask you about business. We've seen another month of over 17% growth as far as passenger traffic is concerned, the third consecutive month of 17% plus growth. You believe this momentum is likely to continue? And what about ATF prices on account of the surge that we've seen in crude oil prices?
Well, the growth is likely to continue for the longest time because we have only 3% of Indians that are flying today. Flying is something which is aspirational. Of course, a lot of people want to fly. And as you are connecting small towns through this whole UDAN scheme and regional connectivity, you are seeing more and more people come into the net and start to fly. So growth is going to happen for several years to come. Of course, there's a great challenge in infrastructure.
But how's the UDAN scheme done for you so far?
UDAN scheme has done brilliantly well. We started flights from Bombay to Porbandar and Kandla. We started flights from Hyderabad to Puducherry and from Delhi to Jaipur and Jaisalmer. And we'll shortly start flights to Kanpur and Adhampur.
Okay.
So it's done extremely well so far. The results of round 2 will be out tomorrow, and we expect to get several routes as well. As you know, we were the first airline major airline to participate in the UDAN scheme, and we have not regretted that at all.
So in terms of passenger load factors, you continue to clock very strong growth there as well. What would be the big challenge outside of ATF prices at this point in time? And also in terms of fleet acquisition, what more can we expect to be added on in 2018 in terms of capacity?
I think the biggest challenge, of course, is infrastructure. The fact that Mumbai as a city has completely run out, that airport has completely run out of capacity. Delhi also has run out of passenger side capacity. I think Chennai and Bangalore and several other airports will also face a shortfall in times to come. So that's the biggest challenge. So hopefully the government can work actively and try and create capacity as soon as it's practically feasible.
there's been a lot of speculation about your interests outside of aviation. Retail is something that you've already forayed into. Media is being rumored as another possible area of diversification. Is that accurate?
No, at this time we are focused on SpiceJet's business. As far as the retail business is concerned, that was supposed to be an ancillary revenue play for SpiceJet, and that's what it continues to be. We will look at opportunities to increase ancillary revenue of SpiceJet. As far as
what's the current run rate now with the ancillary revenues, and where do you see it headed?
We are at close to 16% right now, just a little in excess of 16%. We expect to take that to beyond 20% in the next year or so.
Wi-Fi, the TRAI giving the go-ahead for that.
Yes.
Is that something that you would like to take forward?
Absolutely, most definitely. We will certainly try and put internet on board as soon as it's
And
practical.
will it add significantly to the ancillary revenues?
It should. We expect that it will.
What
and
kind
it'll
of
also
pricing should we expect from a consumer's perspective?
We don't know the answer to that as yet. We haven't worked out the model, but it's certainly a convenience. And it's something that should pay for itself and add to ancillary revenue. So it's something that we will certainly look at.
Concerned about the fact that there is again a conversation around capping of prices, though so far the Civil Aviation Ministry has come out in support of the aviation sector. But is that a worry that we are probably going to see more action?
This has been happening off and on for the last 10 years. I think India has chosen a system where the market determines the fares, and it's worked extremely well so far. In terms of the high fares, DGCA has found in its study that only about 1.5% of the fares are really high, and in fact 80% of the fares are extremely low. So it's worked well, and we see no reason why anybody will tamper with that.
Okay. International plans, again, we last spoke, you were talking about even the possibility of a route like London and making it much more accessible and affordable. Where do things stand on that front?
We fly to 7 countries at this time, which are all neighboring countries. As we get new planes starting in July and August, these
so
are
how
planes...
many do you get in 2018?
We get about 14 planes in 2018. Similar number in 2019, and then they increase to close to 30 planes a year. So these planes have longer range, and as a consequence of that, there will be several new routes which could be opened internationally. So we will explore possibilities.
Well, finally, let me ask you, what to your mind was the most significant takeaway from Prime Minister's address here at the World Economic Forum?
I think it was that the Prime Minister displayed India as a really old country and as a really new country as well. And I think he tried to explain how in today's world, as America retreats from its leadership position, India is a strong alternative, a kinder, gentler, more democratic, more liberal country that can lead the world and is concerned about the world's problems and has solutions to them.
Rajesh Singh, always a pleasure. Thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV18. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
That was Rajesh Singh of SpiceJet. We will continue our coverage as the snow gets cleared out. For now, from all of us here, thanks for watching. Well, we're here in Davos, and PwC puts out its annual CEO survey. This is the 21st edition, and India has made it to the top 5 most attractive markets for 2018. Joining us now is the global chairman of PwC, Bob Moritz. Bob, appreciate you joining us here. First, about India. We've beaten Japan to get into the top 5. What's worked for the India story?
I think 2 things have worked for the India story. One is the fact that when organizations around the world look at the demographics of India, they see tremendous opportunity. That goes to the workforce that's well educated and well positioned for the future, where perhaps other countries maybe not as well positioned, as well as the needs from a consumption perspective. So I think that's one very important thing that people are focused on. The second is, in fact, the reforms that Prime Minister Modi and the administration are trying to accomplish in terms of minimizing the issues around corruption or dealing with some of the issues around currency, the things that he's done in this past year. And people see that what he has done is actually starting to provide results. So I think people are willing to take advantage of the opportunities and see that as an opportunity for not necessarily just the short term, but the long term, that is obviously derived from the Indian organization in the country to drive ahead and be in the top 5.
we talked about the opportunities that India presents, and consumption continues to be the key growth driver. In terms of the challenges or in terms of the unaddressed issues, what is topmost on the minds of global CEOs?
I think in the case of India, it's how do I actually gain access to the country to work together with some of the rules and laws that are in place in terms of co-investing or the requirements to be there. Second is the rule of law in terms of the court system. When you have issues, how do you actually manage through those in a timely way with a degree of certainty that, in fact, it doesn't become uncertain to them. They like certainty in process, to know what to do and how to do it, not necessarily the end result, but at least the process to try to get to an end result. And I think that's where they'll be looking for more movement in that direction, more certainty, and again, at a federal level, but also at a local level, looking ahead.
You were part of the dinner that the Prime Minister hosted at the India reception with global CEOs as well as Indian business leaders. What was the big takeaway?
The real confidence in India and the confidence in the government. It was a fabulous dinner. The meal was excellent, and of course the
Ghar ka khana?
Bilkul ghar ka khana. But the Prime Minister was really very, very eloquent in talking about why India is resurgent, and the CEO certainly agreed with that.
Okay, since we're talking about the India story, what's the plan for India on behalf of Deloitte? You've just done a deal with BMR in India, so what more can we expect now?
We've been in India 125 years. We expect to be there for a very long time. We've got 42,000 people. We will grow to 70,000 in the next couple of years. For us, India is not a cost arbitrage play. It's a talent arbitrage play. And so India is incredibly important for us, not only to serve India, but also to take advantage of the next industrial revolution, Industry 4.0.
But speaking of global optimism, and at this point in time, the global recovery is gaining more momentum and more strength. Financial markets world over in a different trajectory. Does this now start to worry you when you reach this kind of perhaps overconfidence, if some would call it that?
I think the recovery is very secular, and it is also across the globe, as you said, both certainly in the developed countries like the United States and in Europe, but also in the real growth countries like India. India is projected to grow at nearly 8%, and we're very bullish on India. China, very stable growth. So I think we are very confident in terms of the growth story. We do have to be watchful that asset prices don't become bubbles, and so we do have to be watchful. I think the central bankers are certainly going to be very watchful as well.
2017 was a great year for IPOs. It was a great year for fundraising. Do you believe that the momentum is likely to continue into 2018? And M&A, do you expect M&A to pick up given the fact that we've got this big tax plan that's been unveiled by President Trump on account of repatriation, etc.? Would you see massive restructuring, A and B, consolidation and M&A as well?
I am bullish about M&A, and I believe that the trend will continue. And it's enabled by, as I said, the fourth industrial revolution. It requires new business models, new investments in technology. It's a very exciting time.
Well, what is it that you're going to be watching out for in 2018? The biggest opportunity and the single biggest risk?
The biggest opportunity is if C-level executives really take advantage of the optimism that Industry 4.0 brings forth. The biggest risk is us overcorrecting, if you will. I mean, the financial markets overcorrecting.
Our coverage here from the World Economic Forum at Davos continues. Joining us now live and exclusive is the Oil Minister Dharmendra Pradhan, accompanying the Prime Minister. Mr. Pradhan, thanks very much for joining us on CNBC TV18. You have a packed schedule just like the Prime Minister did, but you have a little more time. Give me a sense of who are the ministers that you're going to be meeting, who are the CEOs you're going to be meeting. What's on your WEF agenda?
I'm meeting some of my counterpart. I'm meeting Excellency Fali from Saudi Arabia. I'm meeting Excellency Novak from Russia. Tomorrow I'm meeting Bob Dudley, the CEO of British Petroleum. I'm meeting CEO of Total. I'm meeting some of the world leading consultants. I'm meeting chief of the Deloitte just now. So I'm meeting a lot of people, and now everybody is interested about India. Everybody is looking towards India. India is the destination of world investment today.
So speaking of investment specifically into the oil and gas sector, what can we expect, sir? Because this is a sector that has seen a bit of a lull in terms of investments. Are we likely to see big ticket FDI return to the oil and gas sector?
I'm confident. Not only FDI, lot of investment will come. Already there are a lot of investment already on ground in the Kechi basin. In Andhra Pradesh, more than 15 billion investment are on job, on the ground. That apart, we are going to build the biggest ever PSU-driven refinery, 60 million ton capacity refinery in West Coast in Ratnagiri. Just now we have started our work in Barmer area, where India produced 20% of its crude oil. Lot of gas is coming up in that area also. Now looking into the incremental requirement of India's market, India is the new destination of investment. Lot of people are coming. Rosneft in last year, the biggest ever investment came to India. Rosneft invested.
What about Saudi Aramco, sir?
They are interested. They are interested for Ratnagiri refinery, for the West Coast refinery. That's one of the agenda I am talking to my counterpart, Excellency Pali.
Crude prices, obviously a cause for concern. What is your conversation with the finance ministry telling you in terms of the possibility and the fiscal headroom for another excise cut if needed?
Shereen, this is the point to discuss about the excise cut in the Davos. I'm here talking to when I exchange my views and I'll change the market pulse. I'm confident this due to some global effect, from the global happening. Some refineries shut down, some pipeline breakdown, some of the OPEC strategic move. There is a rebalancing of price today. But the way consumer assertion is on, China, Korea, Japan, India, they are the biggest consumer. We all are at the one consensus. Now consumer has to have play a role. In that, we expect a reasonable price. We have a responsible price. We can't say price should be at $25. There is no reason price should be shut up to $100. So there must be a reasonable and responsible price. I will take sense among the producer country also. I am confident price will behave rationally because due to OPEC is not the total producer.
Yeah.
There are non-OPEC, lot of good non-OPEC countries are there. How America is, because in the President Trump has a priority on the energy sector, in shale industry, in the strategic storage capacity of America, they all will play a factor. They will all play a role to rebalancing the price. I am confident price will not be so obscene, it will hurt consumer. Yes, today in India, it's a concern for us, it's a challenge for us.
Let me ask you about more consolidation, HPCL and ONGC done in this fiscal as you had anticipated and as you had told us when we last spoke. What next, sir, in terms of consolidation within your ministry and your sector?
This government is very decisive. What we have promised, what we announced in the last budget, we have already completed that process. Last week we have completed the ONGC HPCL acquisition. It's a very unique and innovative financial integration came up, and as I told, some more maybe come up in the near future.
Have you identified who merges into whom, etc.? What is the...
We are interested to create a gas grid into that need. We may have to, we are thinking whether evaluating financially also how things can unfold. But in future, more consolidation, more integration will be there because this country has to, Prime Minister Modi has committed at COP21, we will be one of the responsible players. That is the reason we will be continuing to do work on that line.
Prime Minister Modi spoke about the climate change challenge and about how India wants to take the lead there. One of the crucial issues that the government back home is grappling with is emissions. You've, of course, helped advance the BS6 timeline. Now, for BS6 to be available, at least in Delhi and maybe the National Capital Region, even ahead of the announced schedule, how ready do you feel about that?
We're totally aligned with the commitment. Already Mathura and Panipat, both of the refinery is capacity to produce BS6 to the NCR market. We will be supplying what we have committed. Not only BS6, lot of 2G ethanol, lot of biodiesel, lot of bio-CNG. Today, Prime Minister also mentioned that point. India has committed itself to produce 175 gigawatt of renewable energy. Recently, I had been doing on the occasion of commencement of work at Barmer. I visited Jaisalmer. Jaisalmer is the new Shakti Peeth of India. Lot of wind energy, lot of solar energy are coming. Already 60 gigawatt of renewable energy we have already produced. So in the future, India is totally committed, though we are not a major pollutant country, India is totally committed to create new verticals in the bioenergy, the green energy.
Let me ask you about what next on the DBT side, sir. What can we expect?
World is appreciating our model. Lot of agencies, lot of experts are installing this DBT mechanism in the LPG. Now we are providing 990 million household. We are providing DBT LPG subsidy. In near future, fertilizer, food, kerosene oil, these are the area we are opting, we are planning to implement. But
how soon will that be?
It will be, it is on, but looking into the availability of the product, looking into the other aspect, we have to trade cautiously, but successfully. Now, the DBT transaction is multi-billion. So now India has created a base with this Aadhaar, bank account, Jan Dhan, this JAM Trinity with the basic foundation, Jan Dhan, Aadhaar and mobile. These three base has created a world model. Lot of developing country are copying our model, are analyzing our model, and I'm confident gradually we'll moving in that direction.
Okay. Finally, sir, we've got the budget round the corner now. What is the key expectation that you have from budget 2018?
As a citizen, as a public practitioner of the public policy, as a Indian citizen, I will expect Finance Minister and Honorable Prime Minister will lead this, dedicate this budget to more welfare regime. More wealth should be created, more policy reform should be there, but this wealth should trickle down to the needy people. More welfare regime should come up out of this budget.
So you're batting for more welfare schemes?
No, yes. More wealth creation, more policy reform.
But also welfare?
Also welfare.
Okay.
What is the responsibility of the government? To create more wealth, create policy, so more participant of wealth creation should be there, and that earned wealth should trickle down meaningfully, not dole, not through empowerment mechanism, it should trickle down to the poorest of the poor.
The concern that the investors have is that when you say things like more welfareism, does it mean more populism? Does it mean moving away from fiscal consolidation? You're saying that's not the case.
Let me cite one example. In petroleum sector, we have reform in a big way. We have linked our product to the market. This is the biggest assurance from our side for the market. Market is very enthusiastic on this issue. That doesn't mean we are compromising the reform. We are continuous. GST is the biggest evidence of reform. Demonetization is one of the biggest courageous movement for the reform. DBT is one of the biggest evidence of reform. Continuous reform, create policy. As Prime Minister in the today's speech, Prime Minister said, the near future by 2025, India will be multi-trillion economy. The youngster will be the partner of that economy. So we are very clear. Create more wealth, create more resource, and empower the needy people, empower the genuine people.
Mr. Pradhan, always a pleasure to speak with you, sir. Thanks very much for your time. Appreciate you joining us on CNBC TV18, and we wish you the very best of luck here at Davos. The Oil Minister, Dharmendra Pradhan, there articulating the strategy that his ministry is going to pursue here at Davos and for 2018. Back to you guys.